This is Mogul, modern outlook going upper levels, spotlighting our community and our youth. This is if you'd like to get that project called Solo to help support us, all you have to do is cash app us again at IWASH80. That's IWASH80. And when you cash app us, also leave your email so we can send you the project. The CBiz Media heard right here on LICMC Radio. Sonny's Hamburgers, located at 20001 Schoolcraft in Detroit. Food truck now open. We have radio time and commercial spots available right here at LICMC for unbeatable prices. To get your spot today, give us a call at 419-245-4979. That's 419-245-4979. Get your spot today, right here on LICMC Radio.
Hello, we are here with Mr. Mel Mills. This is London, and you are watching Mogul TV, and you might be able to see this on several venues. So we're just going to say hi to everybody everywhere. So how you doing, Mr. Mel Mills?
It's a great day. Thank you all for joining us and allowing me to be a part of this.
Oh, wow. I like that. He started off very positive. It's a great day. That's exactly what we need to hear. Well, Mr. Mel Mills, we've been together before, but just refresh us and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing right now as well.
Yeah, so I am a man of several hats. They call me a cosmetologian man. I still mess that up, but
we know.
That's right.
We know you.
That's right. So I'm a Christian, first off. And I am also an entrepreneur. I work in marketing and communications, and so I do freelance there. I do it for also Wayne State University. I run an apparel brand called God Be Godden that's also functioning as sort of a ministry. Wearing one of our shirts here today. So that's God Be Godden. I'm also an investor. And so between that, freelancing and marketing and communications and investing, the 9 to 5 in ministry. I'm also on a ministry board. And as you could probably tell, I spend a lot of time in the gym. So I'm a fitness advocate. And so those are some of the hats I wear and where most of my time goes.
Wow. It's like, how do you have any time? Guys must be making extra time for you, right?
It feels like it sometimes.
Yeah. Making more room for your gifts. That's excellent. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Mel Mills, we've talked before, and this gentleman has come from a long ways in his life, doing some awesome, great things. And I like, again, how you started off very positive. We need that all the time, especially right now. Mm-hmm. These are several topics that I want to talk about. And I know that you work with the youth as well. He didn't say that, but he does work with the youth as well, which is part of ministry, right?
That's right.
Okay. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is we want to talk about the youth, the perspective of the youth, how, with your experience with young people, how they feel about what's going on today, their outlook on becoming businessmen and women. I know that they are, and even the future with being having families, relationships, with all that's going on today. Do you have experience? Well, you're a young person yourself as well, so maybe we can speak from that. What what does it look like? Is there hope? Is there direction? What is there?
I think there is hope. When we talk about, youth, we're probably talking about millennials and Gen Z. So Gen Z is, anywhere from teen years right now to about 25, early 20s. And, Gen Z is a little different than millennials. So I'm in the millennial demographic. We're kind of, I think the oldest of us are probably around 40. The youngest of us somewhere around, late 20s. Yeah. And so, one of the significant differences between, millennials, for example, and Gen Z, Gen Z looks at millennials and, for example, student loan debt and some of those things. Gen Z is terrified of doing that, right? So millennials have been through 9/11, September 11th, back in 2001. That was a crisis that, gripped the nation. Then we had the 2008 economic collapse, which also kind of, gripped the nation again. And so millennials have been kind of, maybe I can say, scarred by that and have responded accordingly. And specifically with, for example, just, student loans, and just how we manage that and how that has been, kind of one of these things that have been hovering over our heads for a long time. Gen Z has responded to that to say, well, hey, we want to be more entrepreneurial, right? We want to have our own businesses. We want to not take out so much student loan debt. We want to be, frugal, that type of thing. So it's no different than how one generation responds to, the eras or circumstances of the previous one, but that's how they're responding to it. And so I think that they're hopeful, but they're also looking at that saying, well, we don't want to go down that road, right? We don't want to have all this debt, for example, that has plagued the millennials. We want to do it differently. And so, they're responding in different ways. And, so you see this proliferation, for example, of, social media with YouTube. And I mean, there are people now that you can start a YouTube channel and make, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, more than you would at any traditional 9 to 5 or corporate career. And that's something that I think at least Gen Z is seeing opportunity in. You can get on to any platform, start your own platform, start a podcast, all these other things that you can create that I think we're seeing, kind of started with the millennial generation in terms of, all this transition to, digital and social media. But Gen Z has certainly, kind of taken that and run with it quite a bit. And so I think overall they're hopeful, but they're certainly, responding to things they've seen in the previous generation, if that answers your question.
That does answer my question quite well. Now I want to take it to the next step. Okay, this is past you now, but you're still dealing with all people. So we want to go talk about the Gen Z, and then I want to talk about millennials too, because now we want to talk about, I guess, is the next step the baby boomers? Does that come after the millennials? What comes after the millennials?
Before the millennials, those are the Gen X, right? So those would be my parents, Gen X. They came up probably born in the, between the 60s and the 70s, and they had children in the 80s and the 90s. So those are my parents. Those are my folks. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now we're talking about from the perspective of Gen Z, right? And millennial. And then when we get your parents, say that again, the Gen X?
Gen X. Yep.
Gen X. Okay, when we get to Gen X, then I'm going to talk about some things that I heard too as well, just listening through the media. When it's time to get to that point, okay, say not become your parent, but become in your parents' spot. And then for the Gen Z, that would be probably their grandparents, right? Their grandparents' spot. What is respect baby boomers? Okay,
Yep.
what is okay? What is the perspective of, because this here we have we have generational, there may be generational gaps in between there.
Mhm.
It may not be, but just to understand when they look that far or you look that far ahead, how do you feel about your let's see, I don't even know what they call middle age these days. I think middle age has become younger. Back in the day, the
It's
middle
changing.
age was 50. Oh, 50, you're middle age. Now then it's went to 40.
Yeah.
You're
It's
40. What?
changing for
Okay.
sure.
It's changing. Okay. And then also now they say uh maybe 40 is the new 60, or I don't know. You know how they got these numbers. So they're
Yeah.
saying the older crowd is more, they seem to be more youthful, even life or whatever they're doing. So it's it could be confusing, but I'm trying to see your perspective where you are now. How do you feel about where you're going? And I guess with your work, your career, is that is what makes the difference is as is what your future is going to be as a Gen X, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple thoughts that come to mind there in terms of how I see us kind of carrying on, if you will. One of the things that's always stood out to me is so the generation before me, um, my parents, the Gen Xers, but especially the boomers, it was very formulaic in the sense that you went to high school, you graduated, and then you went into the factory or trade or something of that nature. You put in your 30 years, you got your pension, you came on out. It was very, formulaic and regimented like that. And so the times have changed where for the millennials, us, me, and those in my group, and certainly Gen Z, that's not the same case anymore. First of all, there's many more paths that you can take. Things like pensions are no more. And quite frankly, they're not going to be around. My research in investing has, wisened me up to, understand that that's going to be a gone thing. It's already dying out. But, where back in those generations, you had kind of this path. Again, you graduated, you went and got into the factory and you put in your 30 years and did that. It's not like that anymore. And you have to kind of, almost, carve your own path, so to speak. And again, there are more opportunities. There are more things to do. I mean, just look at the last year, for example. This has never happened in the world where we spent an entire year working remotely, digitally.
Right.
That's
Yes,
never
yes,
been
yes.
possible before. And it's been possible now. Actually, it's probably been possible for some time, but it was a sudden shift. It happened just very immediately. And one thing about the millennial generation, us, we've always had to be in this state of continual learning. And so again, so for my parents and the boomers, high school, you got out, you went to the factory or the trade or, some job. You really didn't have to learn much outside of that bubble or essentially what you were doing.
Right.
It's not been like that for the millennials. In other words, for example, look at all the different hats and things that I am wearing. A lot of them came about to produce income, and so uh, we're always in this constant state of learning. So for example, the millennials are the generation that, we grew up on the dial-up phones. But we also transitioned into, the cell phones, right? We grew up with the internet on the dial-up internet, right?
Right.
Transitioned into Wi-Fi, right? We grew up with, pay phones and then, transition into cell phones. And so we've been fortunate enough to be in the middle of these transitions and to be able to pick them up and adapt. But one thing that has been consistent, I believe, at least in my experience as a millennium, is that we've always had to be in this state of continual learning, continual adapting, because things were ever evolving. And so, again, we it wasn't guaranteed that when we graduated, we could just go into a factory and work and put in 30 years. We had to get out, we had to get on the internet, we had to build these platforms, we had to do all these things. And you take Gen Z, for example, the next one ahead. They, for example, have never known a life without smartphones and tablets and Wi-Fi. They've never known a world like without it. it's very much, we call them, digital natives. Whereas, millennials were kind of, we adopted it. And so one thing that I would, characterize the millennials, my group as, is that we've always had to be in this constant state of learning and adapting, to be able to pivot, to grow, to provide. And I see the nice thing about that is that I think what we will see is the millennials essentially not aging, So obviously, like physically, we will get old, but I think what we'll see is that, unlike the previous generation where they just kind of, for the most part, not everyone, stayed with their styles, stayed with their traditions and things. I think you'll see the millennials kind of continue to adapt with the trends and the time. And so you'll see one day a 60-year-old millennial that's wearing, the same clothes and fashions and haircuts and things of the current times, because we've always had to continually shift and adapt and just kind of keep up with things. Whereas the previous generations, they came up a certain way and kind of held on to that. Every generation will kind of hold on to, certain traditions and things. But I think it'll be the millennials that kind of, because we've been in that transitionary period, we'll be able to kind of ebb and flow with the times and kind of keep current with things.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. That sounds good. Okay.
It was just my thoughts. I don't want anybody getting mad.
No, it sounds good.
Yeah.
It sounds good. And I like how, because there are some exceptions to the rule. You're talking about overall, which I understand.
Exactly. Yeah. Not every single person. Yeah.
Not every single person, but there are exceptions to the rules, because it's kind of interesting. There's people that I maybe have known for a long time, which is funny. And I kind of come to this conclusion. You know how they say, that person is 75 years old. But then all the time, I thought maybe they were like in their 50s. That's because they never they never told their age. They never they just had their youthfulness, and it kept going, it kept working, or whatever they were doing. And then when they told me, I almost fell over. So I'm getting to look around. I say, a lot of these people that we say, people are getting they're living longer, they're looking younger, but all my lifetime, I think it's just been happening. Just people they don't necessarily tell you their age. They just keep going. So from that perspective, I see a lot of people that, they tell me their age. I'm like, I understand now. I said, okay, maybe none of us never knew that the people that we consider even older than me is their age because of where you're at. And then this is another thing I've seen. Even in my younger years, as I continue to progress, I've seen people my age or younger people, and it could be the tradition of how they're raised, like you said. It could have been grandma. It could have been whatever it is. It's like it's set in them. And I'm saying, wow, she's 30, but she's set like she's 50. Now today's 50 is like today's 30. But like the 50-50 we're talking about is the older woman, it's more settled. So it's interesting about people. I like how you said how the millenniums though constantly learning, constantly adapting. You're almost like you're breaking the ice for you, like the middle person. You had to come out. I'm not gonna call it what age that is, but in some other words, one thing I like about that, what was happening for you now, and you also know what's happening coming up. And you also know what's in the past. I think you're in a good spot. I think you're
and we've joked about it, but it's true. I said, hey, dude, we grew up on payphones. You had to put in the quarter, 1-800 collect, right? We had to do that. My first cell phone was a minute phone. You had to go to the store and get the minutes to put on it. We had pagers, but guess what? I mean, we got phones now that are more powerful than any computer in the past. So, but millennials have been like, we saw the payphone, and now we're with the whole computer in a pocket. So we've lived through the whole spectrum. And so we know what it was like before, and we can appreciate, how it is now. And I like it like it is now. We want it to come.
I like it like it too. I love it. Ooh, I love it. Because now I don't have to go, this is what I like. This is what I love about this digital era now. I want to pay my bills. I
Yeah.
don't have to go, and if I'm switching between accounts, I don't have to go take the money out, go put it in. I just go online and just flip it, switch
Yeah.
it, you know what I'm saying? And even though I think a lot of us still have busy, very busy schedules, could you imagine in between that we would have to go back to, now some people still are traditional. I talk to
Yeah.
some people, they are still traditional. They're not getting into that. And there's nothing wrong with writing the check. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, uh, and mailing it. Nothing wrong with that. But
And it's
go ahead.
and it's interesting you talk about traditions. So for example, recently, I was talking with a mother, one of my teens. She's concerned about him. I think he's 15 or 16, and she's my age, so she's what, 30, 30, 34, 33. And she was just saying he's not motivated. She's concerned about his future, et cetera, et cetera. But he is motivated, and interested in the digital platforms and gaming and things like that. But she wants him to have a traditional career. She wants him to go to college, and she wants him to get the degree. And I said, hey, look, I hear you, but you got to understand this is a different time, and that there are other paths. And yeah, I share your concern and that you want him to have a successful future and career, but you also need to understand that it is possible today to, for example, back in, when I was growing up, it was like, you can't just stay home and play video games all day. Well, today you can start a YouTube channel or a
There you
Twitch
go.
channel and
Yes.
make hundreds of thousands of
Yes.
dollars by broadcasting your video game
Mm-hmm.
online. Like, that is a thing. Now, to be fair, you got to be good. Like, you got to be really good,
Got to be
because
good. Yeah.
everybody doesn't get that. But the point that I was trying to get through to her was that there are other paths that he can take. And so rather than kind of clamping down on him and saying, you got to go get the degree, you need to allow him some space to find out what fuels him, find out what interests
Yeah.
him. And at 15, 16, you don't know. And so that's where, as mom and dad and parent and coach and mentor, pastor, all those folks, you kind of guide. Obviously, you don't want them to fall off the tracks or at least go too far off, but you want to
Mm-hmm.
be kind of delicate and you want to kind of foster the discovery, like help him to discover what he wants, but don't force him down a path that, he may not want to get a degree. But there's so many opportunities. And, for example, I mentioned I have an apparel brand. It's completely online, right? I don't have any, product here per se. It's all online. He could start one of those and be very
Right.
successful at it. Many of millennials and Gen Z have done that. And so was just trying to, help her to understand that even as a millennial, she was kind of holding on to, traditional way of, must get the degree. And I'm like,
Right.
well, he could, but there's other paths to success,
Yeah.
besides that. And so just to be open to that and, allow him to kind of chart his course, and you make sure he gets there.
Wow. You know what? It that is something, I'm gonna want to relate that to me, even in my time right now. I have a brother, done very well, Air Force, he's at the top of the line, settled, retired and everything, and living a life. He said, I want you, what do you do? So I'm kind of like you, Mel. I've been doing business all my life, really. I make clothes. I raised my children because I had gotten divorced kind of, my kids were little. And I made their clothes. We didn't look like we wanted for anything because I said, okay, I'm just
Mhm.
gonna make the clothes. And I create, I design, and I learned it from my parents. They were business people. But at this time, I'll say maybe about a few years ago, he said, you need to come to move up here where I am and get you a job. Because what you gonna do when it's time to retire? I told him, I said, listen, I'm making money. I have my
Mhm.
own business. I do this. He just couldn't
Yeah.
conceive what I was saying. Now he does, just now, maybe just now. But it was just interesting how, people have that frame of mind. Like you said, you need to follow these certain steps so that you can be successful. And I remember somebody telling me, Mel, I know you do a lot. I don't think you know everything about me yet. We'll learn today. Oh, sorry, I'm not gonna answer. But I was, I was working at the radio station, right? One WKM. And so on, I think it was Saturdays, it would be the day I may have my jewelry in there. I had some things that I had loaded. My boss let me set up everything while I was working. And then the pastor came in and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." He said, "This is what you call many streams of money. I have cosmetics I
Mm,
make, you know." And I said,
yeah.
"Oh, so what you just saying, and that's what you do, and that's what you're saying about the youth of today. There's other ways to make money. And now I can
Yeah.
vouch for it because it happened for me, and it was not the traditional way, honestly. If it wasn't for the different things I was able to do, I don't know if I would have made it.
And
Thank
that's a
God.
very good and that's a very good point because one thing I believe millennials and Gen Z share, and
Hmm.
even generation, I think it's Alpha coming after the Gen Zs. So those are the little kids right now.
Hmm.
But certainly Gen Z and millennials, one thing I think we share is this understanding that, again, the pension days are gone.
So,
You, in order to, for example, I am very realistic about knowing that I'm not going to be able to rely on Social Security, and I certainly won't have a pension. And so, one thing millennials and Gen Z share is this understanding that you have to have multiple income streams to retire comfortably and to live a comfortable life to provide for a family. You cannot rely consistently on one income.
right,
Again, there's all kind
right.
of exceptions. Yes, people do it, but I'm talking about in general. We understand that, hey, you got to have multiple streams. Like that is that's a hallmark of millennials
Exactly.
and Gen Z, is that we
Mhm.
get it. Like you got to be out here. You got to have more than one,
Gotta
unfortunately.
have more than one. Yeah.
But it's a
And
good thing too, because it provides you some, I mean, it's more work, but it does provide you some stability because as things, change, if something gets taken away, you have something to pivot to.
that you can pull from. Right. So this is all exciting. Good news, good conversation. It sounds good for our youth, even though, like you said, we call the old times or those times are changing rapidly. And I remember them saying, okay, uh, that's one conversation that made me think of this. They were saying the young people are looking at the retired people and looking at their retirement life, and they're not going to get any of that. And so they said, well, so and at that one point, they were saying they were trying to figure out what to do because we're not going there. And so now, I like it the way the mind works because even the babies now starting their own business. It's nothing for I just interviewed two little girls. One was 7 and 11 sisters. They're online. They call themselves the real fashion sisters. They wrote a book. They're selling their book online. These are not even teenagers yet. And I'm so excited. Well, so what you're saying is we will do better than survive. They will do better than to survive. They're going to come at it
Yeah.
another way, but they are going to thrive at what they do. And with the digital industry, like you said, in the industry of the internet and all that, there's so many type of jobs that you can get now. Like you said, you can get a job being a gamer or creating a game. Uh, I see a lot, some things I don't, haven't looked into, but people work in Bitcoin and they work. I'm like, wow, okay. So it's just so much that else is going on that maybe, this is where we need to bridge the gap a lot. So we can learn what's happening. Um, and so we can learn what they're doing, what some of these terminologies mean.
Yeah.
People are making money all kinds of ways. These young people are.